This is the Impulsive Thinker Podcast, a show for high-achieving ADHD entrepreneurs. Together, we will inform and educate you about how to improve your self-awareness while developing systems, routines, and habits for conquering the entrepreneurial world. Here is your host, Zélia Brisson.
Hey there, it's Andre the Impulsive Thinker. I'm here today with Zélia Brisson, my oldest daughter, who at the time of recording is 14, almost 15 years old. And we're here to talk about her recent diagnosis and from a teenager's point of view, how ADHD is manifesting in her mind and her brain and the challenges she's had over the last few years. And her diagnosis was actually came into fruition because of high school, where her executive functioning skills were tested at a higher level than it would be in elementary school. So Zélia, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Well, this is not the first time you've been on here, right?
Nope.
No, we had a big conversation about living with me while I was undiagnosed with ADHD. Yep. So recently you just got diagnosed with ADHD and you're starting stimulant medication. But I just want to go over a little bit in grade school, before you went into the gifted program. Explain some of the challenges you were having back then and what you were thinking or what was going on.
I always got bored at school. I would always finish my work early, so I wouldn't have anything to do. And the next best thing to do was to talk to other people. And that was very distracting, so I always got in trouble. And I didn't know what to do, and then I would get into bad situations with bad people, which was not very good.
And what do you think you were, how did you feel when you were getting into situations? When you were talking and disrupting your classmates, were you doing that on purpose to cause a problem?
No.
And when you said because you were bored, that's because of what you know now. At the time, you didn't realize you were bored. That's why you were distracting people.
Yeah.
Getting into the wrong crowd, you're saying you're getting in trouble with the wrong people. Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, I didn't know. I was very unaware of, how bad people are. And because I didn't have anything really to do, someone would say, oh, want to do this? And I'd be impulsive, not think about maybe the consequences of what that thing would have. Mm-hmm. And then I would end up getting into trouble and then getting into more and more trouble because I just wouldn't think about what the outcome of that situation would be.
And do you think you were also fine, during that time when you were getting in trouble, what was going through your mind?
I mean, I did it, so I don't really remember, but I know it kind of felt, I have no clue how to explain it.
Try.
It doesn't feel great when someone's telling you did something wrong or something, mm-hmm. But I don't really know how I felt held accountable, definitely. Right.
And were other people you're getting in trouble with, were there to support you, or did they leave you hanging out to dry?
They just left me and I would always be me getting in trouble by myself, and the other people involved in it wouldn't.
Were you instigated? Did you come up with the reason, the ideas to get it? Was it your idea to do the things that got you into trouble?
No.
It was always someone else.
Yeah.
And do you remember those people and what kind of friendships they were, or what you thought were friends?
I do, yes. Not great people.
Right. And I think that's a lot of things with ADHD kids and even adults. We have a challenge, for finding the right people to hang around. And a lot of times the bad people are attracted to us because we're different. We're kind of felt like oddballs, and they kind of manipulate the ADHD people into doing things that they would do and get some sort of control over you. So shortly after you were identified gifted in the school program and you were given the opportunity to go to a gifted program full time, what was the big difference there with the gifted program compared to your first school?
It was a lot easier to learn because there were a lot more like they're teaching for gifted kids, not just for like.
So what would be the difference? Like, what was the difference between the first school and the second school with the amount of work being presented?
It was quicker. So instead of spending like 2 weeks on like multiplication, you'd spend 2 or 3 days on it. And if you didn't understand it, you would just go for extra help. But most people, like everyone there was gifted, so they needed that to go quicker so they didn't get bored and then zone out and not listen to what was going on.
Right. So you were always interested. You were keeping the interest in there and you weren't repeating stuff over and over again. And then you were in a room full of people that had the same, they were all gifted. So the same mindset, the same ability to learn. So you were in a room of people that understood each other.
Yes.
And then you also had, how was your day? Like when you showed up to school, was your day planned? Was it organized? Was there a lot of free time for you to determine what to do next?
I had 3 different teachers. So the schedules were usually like pretty strict, I guess. Like the time blocks are very like doing this and at this time we're switching to that no matter where you are in your project or whatever you're working on, which sometimes, I just want to finish it. I found it easier to talk to people because they think like me and they kind of understand now. And
But your days were planned.
Yeah, they were.
By someone else.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, so that you were grade 5. Was it grade 5 you started? Grade 6? Grade 5. So 5, 6, 7, and 8, you're in the gifted program, and you really excelled there. And what about your friendships? Were you around the back crowd again, or were there people manipulating you like they did in the other school?
For the first year, it was kind of different because I was one of the new kids. So the kids who were already there, they're in the same class together the year before. So they were all like friends with each other. So being a new person and trying to make new friends is a little bit hard, especially when people are already in groups together. I definitely, the first year I had a few complications with friends. But that helped me a lot to see like what kind of people I'm not trying to hang out with.
Right.
Helped me kind of find out the people I do like hanging out with. So I made some really good friends in that, like in grade 5. And then after that, I made friends who like pushed me to do my best and like wanted me to do my best so that I could be successful and like always do the best I could.
So you were in an environment surrounded by people, common goals. You were all similar, gifted, wanting to learn, and always push yourselves. So you're around the right people, and you got a supportive community, which was very happy for us as parents to see that you were not being bored. You were challenged all the time. And from what I remember, it was quite interesting almost daily. Something different was going on. So
the teachers were also very, like my first grade 5 I had multiple teachers because something happened. But my grade 6 and 7, 8 teacher, who was the same, they wanted you to do your best, and they always like wanted you to succeed. So they would do like the best they could to make sure you got to where you needed to be. And if you had like an idea to go further from what we were being taught, it would be like encouraged that you take on that idea and keep going with it. So
you're allowed to continue with an interest.
Yeah.
Something that was interesting to you, and then the challenge was to learn more about it.
And to apply your interest to things that you're doing in the class. Like usually you have like an assigned book to read as a class, everyone's reading the same thing. But we were able to like choose our own books and write our own things, and it was a lot of creative freedom, which was good. Yeah,
I think you got really lucky in grade 7 and 8 having a teacher that cared and allowed that. All right, so let's move into grade 9. This is your first. You're almost done your first year, grade 9.
Yep.
And what was the biggest change between elementary school, grade 8, and high school, grade 9?
Well, the friends again. It was all new people. I didn't know anybody, so it was very hard to. Wasn't hard to make new friends, but it was like scary to have to go in with a whole group of people who also knew each other from like schools.
From a local elementary school, yep.
Prior to that. Days are a lot less structured because you have your 4 classes that you have to go to at certain times, but during that time, like, the teachers aren't as strict with what you're doing. If you're on your phone, they at the beginning of the year, they'll be like, I don't want to see any phones. But if you're on your phone, they don't really tell you to get off, so it's easy to get distracted if you're responsible. Like, I'm not on my phone too much, I don't think. But and it's harder, especially with homework. The beginning of the year, I was a lot of homework coming at me from, like, nowhere. I didn't expect it because I never got homework before.
So with all that now unexpected homework, what did you have to do now?
I had to, like, make sure I got everything done and put time aside to do that. But it was, like, hard to do that because I wasn't used to having assigned stuff that I had to do, like, that night, get it done that night so I could hand it in the next morning.
So can you explain a little more? So you're having troubles with planning and organizing your time to get stuff done on time, is what I heard. Okay, so what do you think was... Can you explain a little more the challenges you were having with that? What were you thinking? And, what... Can you try and explain the challenges you were having? Like, what do you think was the biggest thing?
Making schedules and blocking out time. Like, I still don't do that, but it's easier for me to say, this right when I get home, I'm doing this, and then as soon as I'm done that, I'm going to work on this as well.
So at the beginning of the school year, what was happening? You would realize something was due tomorrow?
Yeah, it would be like 8:30. I'm ready to go have my shower, get ready for bed. And it'd be like, oh, I have that math homework that I have to get done. And it would take me like half an hour, 45 minutes. So I'm going to bed later because I kept forgetting. And yeah.
And what about big projects that you were given weeks to do? Say, no, you just made a big grimace. Like, you made a big, like, whoa face.
Well, I'd have a big project that I had to do. And I'd say, like, oh, well, I can leave that till later because it's not due yet. And it would be like 1 or 2 days before the due date, and I've only got like my title of my project. Right. So I have to rush it, and usually it's not the best it could be because it's fast research and it's not like vital information that I should have. It's just random stuff that I found.
But you're able to do it quickly because of the urgency.
Yeah.
Right, because it was last minute.
And now I've learned now to, when I want to work on schoolwork, just do this. I work on the things that are due like the soonest. So if something's due tomorrow and I have something due in a week, but I want to work on the thing that's due in a week because it's more fun, I'm going to do the thing that's due tomorrow.
Why do you think that?
What do you mean?
Oh, because it's due sooner.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was hard to like get myself to do that, but it's just easier for me.
Why did you change that way? The way you were doing it?
Because I realized it was kind of an issue for sure. And honestly, just to do the things I don't want to do first just gets it out of the way, and it's nice to be like, oh, that's finally done. I don't have to work on that anymore.
Right. So what goes through your mind when you know you got a project due in 2 weeks? Do you purposely delay it? Do you just say, I got lots of time, I'm just going to wait a little closer, or I'll work on that tomorrow? Do you recall what kind of goes in your mind? Yeah,
it's usually just, oh, that's due in a while. I don't have to work on it yet.
Okay, so to the listeners, what she just said, it's not for a while. No point working on it yet. That is time blindness. That's an example of time blindness. It's now or not now. You've heard me say our brains is now or not now. 2 time frames. Project's not due. 2 weeks is a freaking eternity for us. So you're not going to work on it. So that was a typical ADHD symptom, part of the executive functioning dysfunction. So it's not that you're purposely ignoring and just like, I want to do something else. It's just, do you think it's gone from your head because it's due so far down the road?
Yeah, I just sort of forget about it because I'm not, like, my teachers will remind you if something's due in the next 2 days. But when it's due in 2 weeks, they're not reminding you about it until the 2 days before it's due. So it goes out of my mind and I completely forget.
And then the other thing too, you said, though, even though you can work hard, which is the hyper focus, because it's last minute, I got to get it done now because it's due tomorrow, you can get to work and focus, right? So that's the hyper focus kicking in. And then what you also observed is it's not your best work, but you still get it done.
Yeah.
And depending on your motivation to get certain marks, or actually, that's an irrelevant point. Actually, the point is it's not the best work, because our brain kind of tricked us to be motivated by kicking in the urgency. We like to, has to be interesting, novel, challenging, and urgent, and our brain kicks in. So for your brain to I think your brain tricks you and say, hey, let's just wait till there's a bit of urgency so we can fire on all cylinders and have a good time at it. Mm-hmm. So recently you were put on some medication.
Yep.
Do you want to share a little bit of your experience on that? I know it's been a few weeks, but you've shared with me some things about it. It was good, bad, or whatnot. What was the biggest difference that you noticed?
It was a lot easier to focus and process things in my mind before I get right into doing something. Usually my teacher I'll take my English class, for example, because that's where it happens the most, is she'll put a slide on with what we're doing and I'll just get right to it without listening to what she has to say about what we're doing. And sometimes I'll miss key things that need to be included. So I'll be finish the project and it'll be no, you needed half that information or double that. So then I have to go back and do a whole thing. But now I wait, I focus on what she's saying, and then I get to doing it after that. So I'm able to focus a lot better.
So that also, what I heard there is your impulsivity is a little more under control.
Mm-hmm. I find also, now that you bring that up, I've been I think a lot more about, if someone asks me if I want to do something, I think about it is there something more productive or something I could be doing instead? Is that a really great idea, instead of just saying, no, I don't feel like doing that, or yes, that sounds like fun, let me do it.
Right. And I think with the first school you're at, a lot of your impulsivity got you into trouble because you didn't think it through. Mm-hmm. And when I say didn't think it through, it's not that we don't have the ability to think, it's just our prefrontal cortex, the filter is not there. So there's no part of our brain's not saying slow down, it's just go, right? I don't know if you remember the story, you were trying to explain to Mom basically impulsivity to her, and she couldn't understand what you're trying to describe. And I pulled you aside and I said, explain to me. And then I ran a scenario, because you couldn't put into words. You were very young. This was in the first school you were in. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, here's the story. All right. So in your mind, you go, hey, it'd be funny to put my finger up that person's nose. And then crap, my finger's up the nose. And your reply, do you remember that reply? You went, exactly. I didn't think about it. It was just there. And that was impulsivity. And that was a prime example of impulsivity. And the non-ADHD brain will never understand that. And that's why it's important for us to continue to talk and share with the community, because we get it. And that's what happened. And impulsivity is one of your things, just like mine. So with your medication, impulsivity is more under control. It's not gone. You still have impulsivity, but you're being able to process it through as the medication's there, which is giving you more time to think things through, which is it also helping with some of your planning and looking forward a little more?
Yeah, I think a lot more about what I'm going to do. I'll say, I've got to work on schoolwork tonight because I know I have 3 projects I've got to work on. And then once I get to doing that, I'm like, hey, which ones need the most work? Which ones are going to take the longest? Which ones are due sooner? And then I go from there. Right.
And do you feel that the world has slowed down a little bit around you?
Yeah.
And what I believe, because I experienced that when I was on medication for the first time, and I think what happened is it's our brain actually slowing down a little bit, and then us realizing that the neurotypical world does work slower. Mm-hmm. But it also gives you time to process things. With my youngest daughter, your sister, I think for a while, the brain going so fast, and at a young age, they don't have the comprehension or the cognitive skills to process the differences. I think it's very scary for a 5 to 10-year-old to have this brain that won't stop, and being told to calm down and to settle down and to do things properly. But I think it freaks them out that they can't process things. It's just things are happening so fast. And then with the medication that she's been on, I think that slowed down the world, which actually just slowed down the brain, allowing you to see different things and being able to learn your cognitive skills to process things. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So Well, is there anything else you want to talk about your experience with the high school? Because going from grade school, which is highly structured, which an ADHD brain thrives on, structure, seeing the same thing. And then in this case, it's structured to the point that your executive functioning skills, planning and goal setting was determined by someone else. You didn't rely on your own skills to do it. That was done by someone else. And that's what the elementary school system does. But once you transfer over to high school, now it's a lot more independent. And that's why, therefore, your executive functioning skills was challenged more. Mm-hmm. So there is some structure, there's some guidance, but it's less structured. And just to go a little more advanced, so a lot of kids are diagnosed going to high school just because of that fact. And especially kids that are gifted or do well in school, doesn't look like they have a problem in grade school. When you move to the gifted program, we try to get you diagnosed, but since you weren't doing bad in school, because you have to be doing bad in school to be diagnosed with ADHD according to the DSM, the diagnostic statistical model that the psychiatrists use. And they told us, when she's starting to have problems with friends and school, come get me. And we can give her the diagnosis. But the challenge there was you went to the gifted program, which actually supported you. You weren't getting bored. You're challenged all the day, every day. It was interesting. So that actually supported your ADHD, so you no longer had a problem. The negative experience you had with your friends, you brought that over to the new school. You're able to differentiate good apples from bad apples. And then you had similar-minded kids, which helps a lot. So then high school, and then when you get to university, it's completely independent. And that's where another good set of kids are identified as ADHD is in university because they can't do anything. They did well in high school because there was structure. Someone else was taking care of their schedule. But once you get to university, it's completely up to you. They don't care if you pass or fail, right? So going from more structure to less structure really challenges the executive functioning skills. And like you've heard me talk, I think that's one of the main things about ADHD. It is an executive functioning dysfunction. And I don't think it's a bad thing. It's just the way our brain is. And that comes in handy for a lot of things. But when it comes into the way the world is right now, we're judged for not having those skills. And we just got to have a few more systems in place. Anything else you want to add before we sign off? Because I think we got a lot of good points and examples of the struggles a child will go through. Sorry, I don't mean to call you a child, my little teenager. But I just wanted this to come from the point of view of the child and for you to understand what the child or the teenager goes through in their brains that we cannot comprehend. And you, the listener, if you're listening back, think about the stories that Zélia just told us and think back to when you were that age. Does that make sense? Does it resonate? And do you feel that? So I know this is the third time I'm going to ask you, but this is truly going to be anything else you want to add, and I'll be quiet.
I don't know. I think that the point about being more independent is definitely really hard because it's a big jump from going straight from everything being planned out for you and then going to it's all on me to get everything done and schedule out time. So it was hard to go from that big of a jump. Mm-hmm. Really fast too.
And do you feel that other kids, it seems easier for them to do all this stuff?
I would say, most of the kids in my grade are always looking at me saying why do you do so much? And why are you always why are you worried about your marks so much? How do you get them good? And they're not really high achieving, but I find that they're not worried about anything as much as I am getting stuff done. Mm-hmm. And I find that they're really good at getting things done on time, but it's not to the best of their ability. It's just as quickly as they can get it done, they'll do it. Right.
So I want to touch a bit on that, your perfectionism to a certain degree. But I also have a theory why you're really worried about your marks, because grade 9 was de-streamed. There's no different levels so you're not in an academic course where, you can be challenged more. In grade 10, you will be. So what I believe and what I've observed is you're concentrating on very good marks, so you stay interested and engaged in school. Does that, what I mean?
Yeah.
So your brain kind of came up with its own strategy for you to not disengage from school, because if you would actually just say, 60 is enough, you would have a lot of free time.
Yeah.
And what happens with free time?
Doing not productive things, which can turn into not good things.
It gets into boredom. So I think you came up with your own strategy to stay engaged by requiring to have these high marks. So grade 10 will be another challenge, because it should be more challenging. I just wanted to explain, have Zélia come here and explain the differences from pre-medication and after medication. And when you're on medication, do you feel you still struggle, but just not as much, or is it easy peasy now?
I still struggle with things. It's just not as bad, and sometimes it'll be like the same situation as yesterday, but I'll be struggling with it more today than I was yesterday. So
right, and I don't know if you remember with Dr. Parhar, when he was on, he mentioned that the ADHD brain struggles 6 to 7 times more than the neurotypical with their executive functioning skills, and when you're put on medication, it improves, but doesn't get to 0. You still have 2 to 3 times more struggle. And just like Zélia explained, it's still a struggle, but not as pronounced. So, well, I do appreciate you being brave to come here and talk and tell your story. And I want to thank you, the listener, for listening to us. And I just want to ask you, go back to when you were a kid, a teenager, and see if some of the stories that Zélia and situations she was talking about made sense, or that's what you felt. And if you have a child that's going through ADHD diagnosis, or you think is ADHD, this is a teenager's or a kid's perspective here. That's what's going on in their brain. That's what's going on in their mind. And it's scary for them as well. And to try and keep it from that perspective. So thank you for listening. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Impulsive Thinker podcast. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, rate, and review the show. It helps us get discovered by listeners like you. If you can share it with at least 2 people, that will start the process. Please follow us on social media. Just search for Tactical BTS. We regularly share interesting conversations and breakthroughs about entrepreneurship and ADHD. That's Tactical BTS. Talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to the Impulsive Thinker podcast. If you have a question, comment, or suggestion for the show, please visit theimpulsivethinker.com. The Impulsive Thinker podcast is produced by Tactical Breakthroughs and hosted by Zélia Brisson. Remember, ADHD is only a part of you, not all of you.